They say life is a circle. What you give, you get back. Though sometimes, it takes years, and it comes from places you least expect. I never believed those words until life humbled me. My name is Amina, and this is the story I carry in my chest like an old scar that no one sees but never stops hurting. After my husband died, the world turned its back on me. The days were long, and the nights even longer. The laughter that once filled our little house disappeared, leaving behind walls that echoed my loneliness. Every morning, I'd wake up to silence, and every evening, I'd sit by the clay lamp, hoping the light would chase away my sorrow. But it never did. I made a small living selling fried cassava at the roadside. It was barely enough, but I managed to buy food and save a few coins in a rusted old tin under my bed. People would greet me with pity in their eyes. Some offered words, others just nodded. But no one stayed long enough to hear the ache in my voice. Then one night, during the heavy rains, I heard a knock at my door. It was weak, almost hesitant, like whoever stood there wasn't sure they belonged. I opened the door to find a little girl, soaked to the bone, shivering in the cold. Her eyes, wide and frightened, met mine. There was a hunger in them I recognized, the same kind that gnawed at my stomach on nights when I had no food. She said nothing, just stood there, her hands clutching a torn piece of cloth. Without thinking, I pulled her inside, fetched a blanket, and set the pot back on the fire. I barely had enough for myself, but somehow, feeding her felt like feeding a lost part of my soul. She ate in silence, tears mixing with the rainwater on her face. When she finished, she looked up at me and whispered, "Thank you, Mama." That was all she said before she fell asleep on the floor beside the fire. The next morning, before the sun rose, she was gone. No note, no name, no trace, just the faint warmth where she had slept out. I told myself it was nothing, just a passing moment. But deep down, I felt like the universe had witnessed it. The few coins I had left that night were gone, given to her for the road. I'd risked everything I had, but somehow, my heart felt lighter. Years rolled by. The seasons changed, and so did the lines on my face. People forgot about the widow who once had a husband with a laugh loud enough to wake the birds. I learned to survive in my quiet corner of the world. Then came Elijah. He was unlike anyone I had met before. Tall, with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that spoke before his lips did. He arrived in the village like a wind nobody saw coming. The women noticed him, the way he carried himself, the easy charm in his words. But it was me he sought. At first, I laughed it off. What would a man like him want with a worn-out woman like me? But he was patient, persistent, and every word he spoke felt like water in a land long left dry. He'd wait by my stall, offer to carry my baskets, and tell me stories under the shade of the mango tree. I let my guard down. For the first time in years, I let someone's laughter fill my home. Elijah spoke of dreams, of faraway cities where lights never went out, of starting a business together, of leaving the dust behind. He made me believe again, not just in love, but in life itself. The neighbors warned me. Old Mama Sifa shook her head and said, "Amina, remember a snake sheds its skin, but it's still a snake." I brushed her words aside. Love makes you blind, and sometimes you want to be blind. Weeks turned into months. We planned a future. I shared secrets I'd buried with my late husband. I gave him everything: my time, my trust, my heart. And when he asked for money to start a poultry business, I didn't hesitate. It wasn't much, just the little I had scraped together from years of selling cassava. He promised it would change our lives. I watched him build dreams with words, and I clung to every one of them. He spoke of marriage, of children, of a house with a blue roof. I began to count the days, imagining the life we would have. For the first time in years, the loneliness retreated, and I felt seen. But slowly, things began to shift. He grew distant, came home late, and avoided my eyes. His stories became thin, excuses thicker. When I asked about the poultry farm, he spoke of delays, of permits, of bad business partners. I wanted to believe him. I needed to. because to admit the truth would be to admit I'd been a fool. Then came the evening that would unearth everything. I returned home early from the market, feeling a weight in my chest I couldn't explain. The house was quiet, too quiet. His clothes were gone. So was the tin under my bed. Every coin I had saved, every trinket of value vanished. In their place, a single piece of paper, smudged and hurried. "I'm sorry, Amina. I have to go." That was it. No explanation. No farewell. Just those 7 words. My knees buckled. The room spun. It felt like the world had reached into my chest and ripped out my heart. The neighbors didn't need to say a word. Their eyes told the story. I stayed inside for days. Food rotted in the pot, and the fire went cold. I spoke to no one. I could still hear his voice in my ears, the promises, the laughter. But all that remained was silence. And in that silence, a voice from my past would soon return. Days turned to weeks, and I became a shadow of myself. The woman who once laughed under the mango tree was gone. I barely spoke to anyone. The markets, the neighbors, the world itself faded. I didn't even bother to lock my door anymore. What was left to protect? My heart had already been stolen. I felt sick. The kind of sickness that creeps into your bones when sorrow lives too long inside you. Some nights, I couldn't move from my mat. I'd hear voices outside my window, whispers about the foolish widow who let a young man fool her. Even the old women at the well pitied me now, their eyes heavy with a kind of sadness that felt worse than insults. One evening, when the sun hung low and everything around me looked like it was bathed in gold, a stranger arrived at my door. A young woman, dressed in fine clothes I'd only seen in city magazines. Her skin glowed, her hair wrapped in rich fabric, and her shoes, clean as though the dusty roads had parted for her. I was too weak to rise, but she came in without waiting for an invitation. She called me by name, and her voice held a warmth I hadn't felt in years. I couldn't place her face, though there was something familiar in her eyes. She knelt beside me, holding my frail hand in hers, and said words I'll never forget. "You saved me once, Mama Amina. I've come to save you." I blinked, confused, my memory fumbling through the faded pages of my past. Then she spoke of a night long ago. A little girl, drenched from the rain, starving, standing at my door. A girl I fed and sheltered. A girl I gave my last coin to. My heart stopped for a moment. It was her. Her name was Amara. After leaving my home that night, she wandered for days until a kind trader found her and took her to the city. She worked, studied, and built a name for herself. Now she owned shops, land, and businesses that stretched far beyond our little village. She had been searching for me for years, always remembering the woman who saved her life when the world turned its back on her. News of my illness reached her through an old market woman who remembered my kindness. That's how she found me. Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to speak, to tell her how life had broken me, how I had nothing left, but she hushed me like a mother comforting a child. "You owe me nothing, Mama Amina," she said, "but I owe you everything." Then came a moment I never saw coming. She spoke of her brother, 𝙤𝙤𝙬𝙀. I felt my chest tighten. I thought I'd heard wrong, but she repeated the name, her face clouded with sorrow. Elijah was her elder brother. Years ago, he'd left home after a bitter family quarrel, running from responsibilities and shame. No one knew where he'd gone. Until now, when she arrived in the village and heard my story about a man named Elijah who'd betrayed me, her heart sank. It was the same man who'd vanished from their family and returned only to destroy mine. The same brother she'd mourned in her heart was the man who left me to die. Amara wept as she spoke. She blamed herself for not finding him sooner, for not protecting me from him. But how could she have known? The world is wide and fate cruel. She told me how, years after leaving home, Elijah had fallen into bad company, gambling, lying, deceiving. The Elijah I loved was never truly there. He was a mask worn by a man running from his past. I don't know how long I cried. Not from anger, not even from betrayal anymore. From the strange, twisted ways life unravels itself. How a girl I saved as a stranger would return as family, and the man I loved would turn out to be her lost brother. Amara didn't just bring me words. She came with doctors, food, new clothes, and the promise of a home in the city. She swore on the grave of her mother that she would care for me until my last breath. And for the first time in what felt like centuries, I believed in a promise again. Before she left my house that evening, she placed a small gold necklace in my hand. It had a tiny, delicate bird on it, the kind that never lets its wings be broken. "This," she said, "was my mother's, and now it's yours, because you saved her child." That night, lying in a warm bed she arranged for me, I stared at the necklace, its tiny wings catching the light, and I realized life had not destroyed me. It had tested me. I had loved, lost, and been betrayed. But in giving, I had unknowingly planted seeds that would bloom when the time was right. Elijah was never found. Some said he fled to another town. Others claimed he was seen begging in the city streets. I let him go in my heart. Carrying hate was a burden my old bones no longer had the strength for. Amara became the daughter I never had. In the city, she gave me a room in her big house, a space filled with sunlight and laughter. On some days, we'd sit by her garden and talk about my husband, about old village tales, about the little things that kept a heart beating. She made sure I never missed a meal or a festival again. The pain didn't vanish, but it softened. It taught me something no book or elder could. That kindness never dies. That no matter how many storms tear through your life, somewhere, somehow, the rain will end. Now, whenever I see a little girl pass by, barefoot and hungry, I remember the night a child knocked on my door. And I whisper a quiet prayer that someone else, somewhere, will open theirs.